Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So for this video I'm going to be finally starting my own ranking of all the Doctors, from worst to best. Now just to make things clear, this is of course just my own personal opinion. Also I'll only be ranking the 15 main Doctors, that's Doctors 1 to 13 with the additions of the War and Fugitive Doctors. So I won't be including Doctors like Peter Cushing, the Curse of Fatal Death or Schalke Doctors. I also won't include entities like the Valeyard, Watcher or Dreamlord either. I may end up doing a separate ranking of those at some other point in the near future. Also, we'll be using this tier list created by Mikey Spikey 18 for the ranking, so credit to them for the list. But anyway, let's dive in with the bottom of the list. 15 and 14. The Fugitive and War Doctors, Joe Martin and John Hurt. So I've put these two at the bottom not because I don't like them, but because I just don't really feel like they've been used all that much. Yes, there have been a number of comics, books and audios released starring the War Doctor, but we still don't know all that much about his life and what he got up to during the Time War. We still have just a few snapshots and hints of the stuff he went through, and we have even less for Jo Martin's Fugitive Doctor. Apart from her two appearances in Series 12 in Fugitive of Judoon and The Timeless Children respectively, we only have one short story that stars her Doctor. But from what little we do have, I do like both of their Doctors immensely. The War Doctor comes across as a weary old warrior in most of his appearances. He believes himself to be unworthy to be called the Doctor, but is probably one of the most doctorish Doctors of them all due to him continuing to do some good despite everything. The Fugitive Doctor, meanwhile, really does remind me of the classic Doctors, especially William Hartnell and John Pertwee. She's irritable and moody, but still very clearly the Doctor. Yeah, sure, the Timeless Child is hardly the best idea that the show has ever had, but Jo Martin's great talent and performance really do help to convince me with it. And I'm glad that we finally have a person of colour playing the Doctor. Anyway, next up is 13th place. 13. The 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. Now before any fans of the 12th Doctor start having a go at me in the comments below, please just hear me out. I'm not saying that 12 is a bad Doctor, on the contrary I think he's really great and brilliant just like all the others. I don't hate him or any of the Doctors as a matter of fact. But I do find his character development to be very messy and sloppy in my personal opinion. Looking at how he is from the start of his era to the end, it honestly feels like I'm looking at 2 or 3 different Doctors rather than the same one. In Series 8, the 12th Doctor was pretty grumpy and sarcastic, something which I still find really refreshing after the quirkiness of the 11th and 10th Doctors. Yes, he did still have some quirks, and he did slowly mellow throughout the course of the series, but it was a very welcome departure from what we'd had in the years immediately preceding his arrival. But then in Series 9 he went the complete other way. I find this very jarring whenever I watch Series 8 and 9 back to back. He became much quirkier and started to wear things like sonic sunglasses and played the guitar like he was trying to be some kind of rock star. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that approach, it's just such a departure from how he was beforehand. It always takes me a bit of time to adjust to it. Then in Series 10 he sort of became a mix of the previous 2 versions. He retains the shades and guitar, but he was quite moody and sarcastic again. This is probably my favourite version of the 12th Doctor, and I really loved his chemistry and interactions with Bill and Nardole. It is such a shame that the 3 of them didn't get another series together, I think. I do get the sense that maybe 12's character arc wasn't really thought out at some points, and this leads to it feeling very disjointed and confusing at times, in my personal opinion. But I do like the 12th Doctor, and I do feel like Peter Capaldi is one of the best actors to have ever played the Doctor. He is amazing at the speeches his Doctor gives, and you can tell that he has such an enormous amount of passion and enthusiasm in every episode and scene that he's in. Plus, I do feel like his time as a Doctor was way too heavily dominated by Clara, but I'll talk more about my issues with Clara another time. Anyway, next up is 12. The 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker. Now again, before any fans of the 13th Doctor start angrily typing in the comments below, please just hear me out. I do like the 13th Doctor an awful lot, and I'm definitely not a not my Doctor sort of person. But I do feel like 13's era has suffered a bit from quite a few limitations that the writers find themselves in. Series 11 had very good intentions, and I do think it was very bold to not have any returning monsters or villains in the vast majority of the series, except for a lone Dalek in Resolution of course. And I do like Graham's little character arc that he goes through throughout the series. His grief and depression after his wife Grace is killed is handled very well in a very moving way at times. And Ryan's gradual acceptance of Graham is very good and well written for the most part too. But Yaz is kind of just left with no real character development beyond the fact that she's a police officer. and that isn't really utilised throughout Series 11 at all, except for introduction. Yes, her meeting a younger version of her grandmother in Demons of the Punjab is clearly designed to give her character more depth and development, but it just feels a little flat, as it isn't really referenced that much in the episodes that come immediately afterwards, and that's the only Series 11 episode that actually focuses on Yaz and feels like a Yaz episode. And as for the 13th Doctor herself, Jodie Whittaker doesn't feel like she's really found herself in the part until Resolution, in my honest opinion. This isn't because she's a bad actor, as she's definitely a great actor and more than capable in the part. The writing just kind of forces her into this pattern of quirks, exposition and quick solutions throughout the majority of the episodes. There isn't much character to her Doctor to begin with beyond the fact that she's quirky and witty, and this is hardly anything new to the overall character of the Doctor. Thankfully, Series 12 does improve on this a little and gives 13 a bit more depth as well as a bit of an edge to her. She is left very clearly angry and devastated at the destruction of Gallifrey at the hands of the Master, and becomes a lot snappier. And her finding out that her life isn't what she thought it was with the whole timeless child thing does also help to add to her Doctor a lot for me. She becomes very unsure of who she is, and that in itself is a fascinating and great place to take a character like the Doctor to. But even after all of that is revealed to her in the Timeless Children, she goes back to her default personality a little in Revolution of the Daleks, and she's only in prison for what seems like all of 5 seconds, even though we know that she's spent at least several decades in her cell. And Yaz does get a bit more development herself in Can You Hear Me with the whole mental health and running away from home thing, but it still just isn't really referenced much in the episodes afterwards, and again just feels a bit flat in my opinion. It does feel like Chibnall and the other writers are trying to do something really interesting and original with 13, Yaz and the others, but for whatever reason it's just not being fully realised right now. Maybe it's to do with the number of episodes and the runtime, or maybe it's something else. But even though I kind of just went on a little rant there, I do feel like the 13th Doctor is really good, and I really do hope that she won't regenerate at the end of Series 13. Like I've said before, it still feels like she's only just arrived, and I hope that Jodie Whittaker is given more time to flesh out her Doctor more, and to really make the part her own. Anyway, next up is 11. The 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. Again, like all of the Doctors, the 11th Doctor is a great and brilliant Doctor. But just like with 12 and 13, I do have some issues with the writing during his era. Things start off well enough with Series 5, which despite some bits not having aged well, is still a great series that I have a lot of fond nostalgic memories of. But then we come to Series 6. And this is when I think Stephen Moffat really starts to make his own distinct impression on the show. The whole River Song and Doctor's death arc was good, but was a little convoluted and overcomplicated for some people. This convoluted nature continued with Series 7 and it became even more confusing for some people. We had the by now tired old formula of the companion being a really special and important person, with Clara's impossible girl arc. But the 11th Doctor did at least go through a pretty consistent and coherent character arc, unlike the 12th Doctor, and Matt Smith settled into the part very quickly and was able to make the part very much his own. I do feel like perhaps parts of 11's character and personality did sometimes verge a bit too similar to the 10th Doctor's, maybe, and I do wonder if it was the best idea to have another mainly quirky Doctor so soon after another. But these are just minor gripes of the 11th Doctor, and to be honest, the 11th Doctor still feels like a different Doctor in his own right. The only real issue I have is with the writing, but that's just down to personal taste, of course. It's only natural that whenever a showrunner comes in, they want to do their own way of doing things, rather than what others want them to do. And I think it's important to remember that when looking at not just Stephen Moffat's time on the show, but Chris Chibnall's and Russell T Davies's too, and just the whole of Doctor Who overall. But anyways, we now come to 10th place, and that is 10. The 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. The first classic Doctor we come to on this list, the 7th Doctor, is another great Doctor. Starting off being a buffooning clown, the 7th Doctor gradually becomes a master manipulator who, whilst always meaning well, does like to play chess with the lives of his enemies and even companions. He also believes that the ends justify the means, being one of a very small number of Doctors to believe this. The 7th Doctor therefore can be a little sinister and cunning, even though we know that he is still a Doctor and still tries to help wherever he can. I find all of this to be really fascinating and interesting, and I do quite like the Cartmel master plan, even if, like The Timeless Child, it can be a little controversial among fans in a way. But what stops his Doctor from being any high on this list is how his Doctor was in his very first season, season 24. He's a very silly and at times annoying Doctor during some parts of that season, and it is somewhat jarring and hard to believe that this clown is the same Doctor as the Master Manipulator. But that's the only negative thing I have to say about the 7th Doctor. So, let's now move on to 9th place, and that is 9. The 8th Doctor, Paul McGann. The 8th Doctor was arguably the unluckiest of all the Doctors, excluding the War and Fugitive Doctors. He never really had that much of his own era on TV, with just a TV movie and minisode acting as his only on-screen adventures. So when Big Finish were able to start using the 8th Doctor in their own audio dramas, they essentially had to develop his entire character and personality. And they definitely succeeded. Paul McGann really owns every audio that his Doctor appears in. His Doctor is charming, funny and witty, growing darker later on after the death of his companion Lucy Miller and great-grandson Alex Campbell. His Doctor has without a doubt become the Doctor of Big Finish audios, probably appearing in more than any other, or thereabouts at least. And he's always a joy to listen to, and I'm really glad that Paul McGann got the chance to really make his own stamp on the character and grow his Doctor. Anyway, next up is 8. The 6th Doctor, Colin Baker. The 6th Doctor is a Doctor who was very badly handled during his time on TV. There were some major disturbances and drama going on behind the scenes, and this really badly affected his era to the point where Colin Baker's time as the Doctor ended before it had even fully begun. Therefore I do feel bad for having his Doctor this low, but that's only because of his Doctor not really fulfilling his full potential on TV. Yes, he's done a lot of Big Finish audios, and whilst I haven't listened to them all yet, the ones I have made me appreciate and love his Doctor so much more. I'm really glad that Big Finish gave Colin Baker the chance to flesh out and fully develop his character, and to show us all just how great his Doctor can be. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the 6th Doctor. And it's also where we'll have to leave the ranking for this part, but don't worry, part 2 of this ranking will be coming very soon, so please keep an eye out for that. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to click that subscribe button below, as well as press the bell icon at the side so you'll be notified of when all my new videos come out, such as part 2 of this ranking. This channel currently has 331 subscribers as of the time of recording this video, but if we're able to get to 350 by the end of this year, then I will do a Q&A where you can ask me whatever questions you want. And please feel free to tell me what your own ranking of all the Doctors would be, and whether you agree with mine or not. Just keep it polite, please. And if you want to binge watch all of my videos so far, then there is a link to a playlist of all of them in the description box below. So, until next time, bye bye!